My name is Daisy, and for months I couldn't understand why my expensive Chanel No. 5 perfume kept disappearing. It was an anniversary gift for my husband Mark, something I treasured and used sparingly, yet the bottle seemed to empty itself even when I wasn't home. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, who would use someone else's perfume? But when my neighbor mentioned smelling my signature scent in the hallway while I was at work, a chill ran down my spine. That half-empty bottle of perfume became my first clue that someone else had been in my home, in my bedroom, living a life I knew nothing about. If you're watching this, you might think you know where this story is going, but I promise you, the truth I uncovered was far more twisted than anything I could have imagined. Comment where you are watching from and like and subscribe for more stories. The morning light filtered through our bedroom curtains as I reached for my favorite perfume bottle on the vanity. Chanel No. 5, a gift from Mark on our 10th anniversary just 6 months ago. The weight fell off in my hand, lighter than it should be. I held it up to the window, watching the amber liquid catch the light. Only half full? That couldn't be right. I'd barely used it since summer ended. "Honey, have you seen my perfume?" I called out to Mark, who was adjusting his tie in the mirror. "What perfume?" he asked, not looking up. "The Chanel. The one you gave me, for our anniversary." He shrugged, that casual, dismissive gesture I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "Why would I touch your perfume, Daisy?" Of course. Why would he? I set the bottle down, but something nagged at me, a tiny alarm bell ringing somewhere in the back of my mind. I'd always been meticulous about my things, especially the expensive ones. My mother had taught me to treasure the finer things in life, to make them last. A bottle this size should last me at least a year with my conservative use. The unease followed me to work that day, sitting like a small stone in my shoe, not painful enough to stop and address, but impossible to ignore completely. 3 days later, Mark came home at 9:30 p.m. instead of his usual 7 o'clock. I'd already eaten dinner alone, watching some mindless reality show about couples renovating houses together. The irony wasn't lost on me. Those couples seemed to communicate more about paint colors than Mark and I had talked about anything meaningful in months. "Traffic was murder," he said, loosening his tie as he walked past me to the kitchen. Then Reynolds wanted to go over the quarterly reports again. I watched him from the doorway as he heated up the plate I'd left for him. Reynolds left at 5 today. Sarah from accounting mentioned she saw him at the grocery store when she was picking up lunch supplies for tomorrow's meeting. Mark's hand paused for just a second over the microwave buttons. "Must have come back. You know how he is about those reports." I knew how Reynolds was about leaving the office the second the clock struck 5. I also knew my husband's tells after 15 years of marriage. The way his left eye twitched slightly when he was constructing a lie, how his shoulders tensed up like he was bracing for impact. "Right," I said, turning back to my show. "Of course." The next morning I noticed it immediately. My pillow, I always placed it perfectly centered on my side of the bed, the embroidered edge facing the headboard. It was shifted, turned slightly, the indentation different from how my head usually left it. The blanket, too. I had a specific way of folding it, a habit from my military father who insisted everything have its place. It was folded differently now, still neat but wrong. Like someone had tried to replicate my routine but didn't quite know the steps. Mark was already in the shower. I stood there, staring at the bed, trying to rationalize. Maybe I'd been restless last night. Maybe I'd forgotten. Maybe. The word that had become my constant companion lately. But then I saw it in the bathroom after Mark left for work, a faint lipstick mark on the water glass he'd left by the sink. Not my shade. I didn't wear coral pink. It washed me out. I wore deep reds, burgundies, colors that complemented my olive skin tone. This was something a blonde would wear, someone with fair skin and blue eyes. I picked up the glass, turned it in the morning light streaming through the bathroom window. The mark was so faint I might have missed it if I hadn't been looking. But I was looking now. I was seeing everything. "Oh, Daisy." Mrs. Patterson from next door called out to me that afternoon as I was getting the mail. She was walking her ancient poodle, Mr. Whiskers, who seemed to wheeze with every step. "I've been meaning to tell you, that perfume of yours is just lovely. I caught a whiff of it in the hallway yesterday afternoon. Chanel, isn't it?" My blood turned cold. Yesterday afternoon? Yes, dear. Around 2 p.m., I think. I was coming back from my doctor's appointment. Such an elegant scent. Reminds me of my younger days in Paris. I forced a smile. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. But I was at work yesterday afternoon. Her face scrunched in confusion. Oh, well, perhaps it lingered from morning? Scents do carry in these old buildings. Perhaps, I agreed, but we both knew that didn't make sense. Perfume didn't linger for 6 hours in a drafty hallway. That evening, I stood in our bathroom, running my fingers through my hair after my shower. Dark brown strands tangled around my fingers, mine. But there, caught in the drain cover, were different strands. Longer, lighter, almost golden in the right light. I picked one up, held it between my fingers. It was finer than mine, silkier. The kind of hair I'd always envied on other women. I wrapped it around my finger, watching it catch the light, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't my imagination. This was evidence. What are you doing? Mark's voice made me jump. He was standing in the doorway, fresh from his run, sweaty and breathing hard. Just cleaning the drain, I said, flushing the hair down with running water. It was getting clogged. He nodded, already pulling off his shirt. I'm going to hop in the shower. Want to order Thai food tonight? Sure, I said, moving past him. As I did, I caught a scent, floral, familiar. My perfume. On him. Mark. Yeah. Are you wearing cologne? He laughed, but it sounded forced. No, why? You smell like perfume. Probably from hugging you this morning, he said, already turning on the water. I hadn't hugged him this morning. I hadn't hugged him in days. We'd become two people living parallel lives in the same house, our paths crossing but never really connecting. That night, as we ate pad thai and watched the news, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Every surface seemed to hold secrets. Every shadow could be hiding evidence of another presence. The walls themselves felt like they were keeping things from me, conspiring with Mark to maintain this facade of normalcy. You're quiet tonight, Mark observed, not looking away from the TV. Just tired, I said, the lie rolling off my tongue as easily as his had been lately. You should get more sleep, he suggested, finally glancing at me. You've seemed on edge lately. On edge. Like I was the problem. Like my noticing things was the issue, not the things themselves. Maybe you're right, I agreed, setting down my barely touched food. I think I'll turn in early. But I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to Mark's breathing eventually deepen into snores, and made a decision. I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. I'd watch. I'd wait. I'd collect every small detail, like breadcrumbs, leading me to the truth. My mother always said I was too observant for my own good, that I noticed things other people missed. She meant it as a criticism, but maybe it would be my salvation now. The next morning, I implemented my first test. Before leaving for work, I took a thin pencil and made a barely visible mark on the perfume bottle, right at the liquid line. It was so faint you'd have to know to look for it. But I would know. Mark kissed my cheek goodbye, a mechanical gesture, lips barely grazing skin, and I left for work with my heart hammering. All day, I found myself checking the clock, wondering what was happening in my home while I sat in meetings about marketing strategies and brand awareness. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was paid to notice consumer behavior patterns, but had missed the changes in my own husband's behavior for who knows how long. When I got home that evening, Mark was already there, cooking dinner. The gesture might have been sweet if I hadn't immediately noticed the perfume bottle. The liquid level had dropped below my pencil mark. Not by much, but enough. Smells good, I said, referring to the pasta sauce bubbling on the stove but staring at the perfume bottle. It's your favorite, he said, stirring with one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. Thought I'd surprise you. Surprises. Our marriage was full of them lately. Over dinner, I asked casually, how was your day?
Busy.
Back-to-back meetings. He twirled his fork in the spaghetti, not meeting my eyes. Anyone I know? Just the usual suspects. Why? No reason. Just making conversation. He looked up then, studying my face. You've been asking a lot of questions lately. Have I? I kept my tone light, innocent. I guess I just miss talking to you. Feels like we're ships passing in the night these days. His face softened slightly. I know. This quarter has been brutal. It'll calm down soon. Empty promises. I'd heard them before. 2 days later, the credit card statement arrived. I usually let Mark handle the finances, he was always better with numbers, but something made me open it. There, between the grocery stores and gas stations, were charges I didn't recognize. La Perla, a lingerie boutique downtown I'd never been to. $287. Chez Laurent, a French restaurant on the other side of the city. $156. Both from days when Mark had said he was working late. I photographed the statement with my phone before putting it back in the envelope, resealing it carefully. Evidence. I was building a case like a detective, though I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with it. That afternoon, I decided to test something. I called Mark's cell phone from my office line at 2 p.m. Hey, he answered on the third ring, slightly breathless. Hi, honey. Just wondering if you could pick up my dry cleaning on your way home? I'm in a meeting, he said quickly. Can't really talk. Oh, sorry. Where are you meeting? I can pick it up myself if it's closer to Conference Room B. Gotta go. He hung up. 5 minutes later, I called his office line. It rang.
And rang. And rang.
If he was in Conference Room B, he wouldn't hear his desk phone. But then, impossibly, I heard it through his cell phone when I'd called. A faint echo in the background. He'd been at his desk, not in any meeting. That evening, as I was folding laundry, I found it a silk scarf tucked between Mark's gym clothes. Hermes. Coral pink, like the lipstick on the glass. It smelled of my perfume, so strongly it made my stomach turn. This wasn't mine. I didn't own anything in coral pink. I held it up, letting it catch the light from our bedroom window. Such an expensive thing to leave behind. Unless it wasn't left behind. Unless it was meant to be here, marking territory, like an animal would. What's that? Mark appeared in the doorway, fresh from a shower. I was going to ask you the same thing, I said, keeping my voice steady. Found it in the laundry. His jaw tightened. Must be yours. I don't wear coral. Then I don't know, Daisy. Maybe it got mixed up at the dry cleaners. We haven't been to the dry cleaners in 2 weeks. His face flushed. Why are you interrogating me? It's just a scarf. A Hermes scarf. That's a $400 scarf, Mark. So someone would notice if they lost it. He stepped forward, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Anger mixed with fear. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a simple question about an expensive item that appeared in our laundry. This is ridiculous, he snapped, grabbing the scarf from my hands. You're being paranoid. First the perfume, then 20 questions about my day, now this. What's gotten into you? Classic deflection. Turn it around, make me the problem. You're right, I said, backing down. It wasn't time yet.
I'm sorry.
Work has been stressful. His shoulders relaxed. Maybe you should take a few days off. You seem overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. That's what he thought I was. Not suspicious. Not onto him. Just a stressed-out wife who was imagining things. That night, our neighbor Tom knocked on our door while Mark was in the shower. Hey, Daisy, he said, shifting awkwardly. This is kind of weird, but did you guys have someone staying with you recently? My heart stopped. No, why? I saw someone going into your apartment yesterday around noon. A woman. Blonde. I figured maybe it was a relative or something since she had a key.
A key.
She had a key to my home. Must have been the cleaning lady. I lied smoothly. We just hired someone new. Oh, that makes sense. Just wanted to make sure. You know, with all the break-ins in the neighborhood lately. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate you looking out. After he left, I stood with my back against the closed door, breathing hard.
A key.
The blonde woman had a key. Mark had given someone else a key to our home, our sanctuary, our life. I found Mark in the bedroom, pulling on his pajamas. Who was at the door?
Tom.
He mentioned seeing someone here yesterday. Mark didn't even pause. Probably the maintenance guy. The super said he'd send someone to check the radiator. Lie after lie after lie. They fell from his lips like autumn leaves, natural and endless. The next morning, a Sunday, I woke to find 2 wine glasses in the sink. We hadn't drunk wine. I'd had tea before bed. Mark had water. But there they were, lipstick on one rim. That same coral shade that was becoming my nemesis. Mark was at the gym.
Or so he said.
I stood at the sink, running my finger along the lipstick mark, and felt something break inside me. Not my heart, that had been slowly fracturing for weeks now. This was different. This was my last vestige of denial crumbling away. I washed the glasses slowly, methodically, watching the lipstick dissolve under the hot water. Evidence disappearing down the drain. But I'd seen it. I knew. That night, I lay awake again, but this time my mind wasn't racing with questions. It was planning. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Not just for Mark, but for myself. I needed to know I wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't the overwhelmed woman he was trying to paint me as. I thought about hiring a private investigator, but that felt too much like admitting defeat. This was my marriage, my home, my life. I would uncover the truth myself. The next day, I called in sick to work. Mark left at his usual time, kissing my forehead as I feigned sleep. 20 minutes later, I was dressed and positioned at the coffee shop across from our building, a clear view of our entrance. At 11:47 a.m., she arrived. Blonde, just as Tom had described. Tall, maybe 5 feet 8 inches in heels. She wore a coral pink dress that matched the lipstick, the scarf. She walked with confidence, purpose, familiarity. She knew exactly where she was going, because she'd been there before. Many times before. She used a key, a silver key that caught the sunlight as she turned it in the lock. My lock. My home. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. Outside my own door, I could hear them. Laughter. Music. The clink of glasses. Wine glasses, no doubt. And cutting through it all, the sound that would haunt me. Mark's laugh. Real. Genuine, delighted. A laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months, maybe years. I stood there, key in hand, for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. I could confront them now. Burst in, catch them literally in the act. But something held me back. This wasn't enough. This was just the beginning of the story, not the end. I turned and walked away, my footsteps silent on the carpeted hallway. Back at the coffee shop, I ordered another latte and pulled out my notebook. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote, "Evidence log." And then I began to plan. Not just to catch them, but to understand the full scope of this betrayal.
How long?
How serious? How blind had I been? As I wrote, my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Might be late tonight. Client dinner came up last minute. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at those last 2 words. Love you. They used to mean something. Now, they were just another lie, typed out with the same fingers that had probably been running through her blonde hair moments ago. I texted back. No problem. Have a good dinner. Love you too. Because 2 could play this game. And I was just getting started. The perfume bottle on my vanity wasn't just missing liquid anymore. It was evidence of a crime, the theft of my trust, my security, my marriage. But every crime has evidence, and every criminal makes mistakes. I would find them all, document them all. And when I was ready, when I had everything I needed, I would show Mark and his blonde accomplice that the overwhelmed, paranoid wife they dismissed was actually their biggest threat. The perfume kept disappearing, but so did my naivety. And in its place grew something harder, sharper, more focused. I wasn't just Daisy anymore. I was a woman with a mission, and I would see it through to the end. Whatever that end might be. The morning after seeing her enter my home, I woke with a strange sense of clarity. The hurt was still there, a dull ache beneath my ribs, but it had transformed into something useful. Determination. I made breakfast for Mark as usual, scrambled eggs the way he liked them, slightly runny, with whole wheat toast. We moved through our morning routine like choreographed dancers who'd long forgotten the music. You seem better today, Mark observed, pouring his coffee. More like yourself. I wanted to laugh at the irony. I'd never felt less like myself. Or maybe I'd never felt more like who I was supposed to be. The Daisy who didn't question, who didn't probe, who accepted surface explanations. She was the imposter. This vigilant woman documenting lies was the real me. I took your advice, I said, spreading jam on my toast with deliberate calm. Got some rest. You were right. I was overwhelmed. His smile was relieved, genuine in its relief, if nothing else. Good. That's good, honey. Honey. The endearment felt like ash in the air between us. After he left, I stood in front of his side of the closet. His phone was never unguarded anymore. He even took it into the bathroom during showers, claiming he needed to be available for international clients. But everyone has patterns, weaknesses in their security. I'd lived with this man for 15 years. I knew his habits better than he did. The jacket he'd worn yesterday hung there, and I went through the pockets methodically. Receipt from a gas station 2 towns over. Why drive that far for gas? A business card for a jeweler I'd never heard of. And then, in the inside pocket, a small piece of paper with numbers written in his handwriting. Not a phone number, too short. A code? I photographed everything, returned each item exactly as I'd found it. My phone was becoming a repository of evidence, which I backed up to a cloud account Mark didn't know about. Tech-savvy Daisy, another version of me he'd never bothered to discover. That afternoon, I made a decision that felt both necessary and like a betrayal of my own principles. I drove to the electronics store on the far side of town, paid cash for a small voice-activated recorder. The teenager who rang me up didn't even look at me, just mumbled the total while scrolling on his phone.
Perfect.
No one would remember this transaction. But when I got home, I stood in our bedroom, recorder in hand, and hesitated.
There was something so final about this step.
Once I placed this device, I was admitting that my marriage had become a war zone where surveillance was necessary. Then I remembered the sound of their laughter through the door, and my hesitation evaporated. I tucked it behind the picture frame on Mark's nightstand, a photo from our honeymoon in Santorini, both of us tanned and glowing with new love. The irony was almost poetic. 3 days passed before I had the courage to retrieve it. Mark had been working late twice, and both nights I'd noticed the perfume level drop. When I finally listened to the recording, alone in my car in a parking garage downtown, I heard things that would have broken the old Daisy completely. Her voice was younger than I'd expected, with a slight accent I couldn't place. Midwest maybe, trying to sound more sophisticated than her origins. She's so clueless, the voice said, followed by that tinkling laugh. I used her perfume again today. It's like she doesn't even notice. She notices, Mark's voice replied, and my breath caught. She asked about it last week. And I told her she was being paranoid.
She backed right down.
Daisy hates confrontation. They knew me, or thought they did. Conflict-averse Daisy. Peaceful Daisy. Doormat Daisy. How much longer do we have to keep this up? She asked. I'm tired of sneaking around. Just a few more months.
I need to move some assets around first.
Make sure she can't touch them in the divorce. Assets.
Divorce.
The words hit like physical blows. This wasn't just an affair. This was an exit strategy. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the device. In the reflection of my car window, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, pale, drawn, with eyes that had seen too much. But also fierce.
Determined.
That weekend, I told Mark I was visiting my sister in Boston. That's sudden, he said, barely looking up from his laptop. She's having a rough time with a divorce. I lied smoothly. I was getting good at it, learning from the master himself. Thought I'd be a supportive sister. That's nice of you. When will you be back? Sunday night. He nodded, already mentally calculating his freedom, no doubt. I could practically see him texting her the moment I left. But I didn't go to Boston. I checked into a hotel 20 minutes away under my maiden name, paid cash again. Then I drove back to our neighborhood and waited. She arrived at 11 a.m. Saturday morning, this time wearing jeans and one of Mark's college sweatshirts. My stomach turned. She was playing house in my home, wearing my husband's clothes, using my perfume. The casualness of it was almost worse than the betrayal itself. I waited an hour, then approached my own door. I could hear music inside, jazz, which Mark claimed to hate when I played it. Another lie. I used my key as quietly as possible, easing the door open inch by inch. They were in the kitchen. I could see her from the hallway, blonde hair in a messy bun, barefoot, making eggs in my pan. Mark came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, kissed her neck. The intimacy of it, the easy familiarity, told me everything. This wasn't new. This had been going on for months, maybe longer. I backed out as silently as I'd entered, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they'd hear it. Back in my car, I sat for a moment, processing what I'd seen. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My perfume bottle was sitting on the kitchen counter. She hadn't just been using it. She'd moved it from the bedroom to the kitchen like it was hers to relocate. That's when I saw Mrs. Patterson walking Mr. Whiskers. An idea formed. "Mrs. Patterson," I called out, approaching her with my best concerned neighbor smile. "Daisy, I thought you were in Boston." "Just getting back, actually." "Hey, I'm worried I might have left my stove on. I'm so scatterbrained lately. But my hands are full." I held up the shopping bags I'd grabbed from my trunk as props. "Would you mind terribly going up with me? Just to double check? I'd feel so much better with someone else there." "Of course, dear. Can't be too careful." We rode the elevator together, her chattering about her nephew's wedding. As we approached my door, I made a show of fumbling for my keys, dropping them once for effect. Then I opened the door wide, stepping back to let her enter first. The gasp she let out was worth everything. Mark and the blonde woman were on the couch, her in his lap, both partially undressed. They sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents, Mark's face cycling through shock, rage, and fear in rapid succession. "Oh my!" Mrs. Patterson exclaimed, her hand flying to her chest. "Oh my goodness. This isn't." Mark stammered, grabbing for his shirt. The blonde woman, I could see her clearly now, pretty in that generic way, probably early 30s, had the audacity to look annoyed rather than ashamed. "I thought you were in Boston," Mark said, his voice accusatory, as if I was the one in the wrong. "Clearly," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Mrs. Patterson, thank you so much for your help. I think we're all set here." But Mrs. Patterson wasn't moving. She stood frozen, staring at the scene with the fascination of someone watching a car wreck. "Mrs. Patterson," I said more firmly. "Thank you." She finally stirred, backing toward the door. "Yes, well, if you need anything, dear." The moment the door closed, the blonde woman stood, pulling her dress back into place with movements that suggested this wasn't her first time being caught. "I should go," she said to Mark, not even acknowledging my presence. "Don't," I said, and both of them turned to look at me in surprise. "Please stay. We should talk about this like adults." Mark's eyes narrowed, suspicious of my calm. "Daisy. No, really. You've been bringing her into my home for how long now? Using my perfume." I looked directly at her. "That is you I've been smelling in my Chanel, isn't it?" She had the grace to flush slightly. "I didn't think you'd notice." "Because I'm so clueless, right?" I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the audio file. "Just a stupid wife who hates confrontation?" Their voices filled the room from my phone speaker. "She's so clueless." I told her she was being paranoid. Just a few more months, move some assets around. Mark went white. "You recorded us." "You gave her a key to our home," I countered. "I think we're past worrying about privacy boundaries." The blonde, I still didn't know her name, realized I didn't want to grab her purse. "This is between you two." "No," I said, blocking her path to the door. "You don't get to play house in my home, wear my husband's clothes, use my perfume, and then just walk away when it gets uncomfortable. What's your name?" She lifted her chin, defiant. "Jessica." "Well, Jessica, how long have you been sleeping with my husband?" 8 months, she said, and the casualness of it was breathtaking. 8 months. Last Christmas, when Mark had given me earrings and told me he loved me. Our anniversary dinner in March. The weekend getaway in April that he'd canceled last minute for a work emergency. Did you know he was married when it started? Of course I knew. She actually smiled.
He told me all about you.
The wife who was more interested in her career than her marriage. Who let herself go. Who paid for half of everything in this apartment, I interrupted. Who supported him through his MBA. Who he doesn't love anymore, Jessica finished, her voice sharp as a blade. The words hung in the air. Mark said nothing to contradict them. I looked between them, these two people who had conspired to humiliate me in my own home, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt transformed into something colder, more calculated. You know what? You're right, I said, surprising them both. He doesn't love me anymore. Maybe he never really did. But here's what you don't understand, Jessica. This isn't about love anymore. This is about respect. And consequences. I walked to the kitchen, both of them following uncertainly. The perfume bottle still sat on the counter. I picked it up, examined it like I was seeing it for the first time. You've been very free with my things, I said to Jessica. My perfume. My home. My husband. Tell me, did he mention that this perfume was an anniversary gift? That he saved for 3 months to buy it because he knew how much I loved it? Mark shifted uncomfortably. Daisy, that's enough. Enough. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. We're just getting started. Jessica, did he tell you about the apartment in Riverside Heights? Both of them froze. What apartment? Jessica asked, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. I smiled, pulling out my phone again. The one he leased 5 months ago. The one with your photos on the wall. I have pictures if you'd like to see. I showed them the photos I'd taken during my investigation. The framed pictures of them together, the second life they'd built while I sat at home wondering why my perfume kept disappearing. You went there? Mark's voice was barely a whisper. The landlord was very chatty. Thought Jessica was your wife. Mentioned you'd been talking about making it permanent once your divorce went through. Jessica turned to Mark. You said you hadn't started proceedings yet. I haven't, he said quickly. But you told the landlord you had. I continued, enjoying the discord I was sowing between them. You also told him Jessica was a doctor. Is that true, Jessica? Are you a doctor? Her face flushed. I'm in pharmaceutical sales.
Ah.
And Mark told me you were one of his clients. Another lie to add to the collection. The tension between them was palpable now. I could see Jessica reassessing, realizing that the man who'd lied to his wife had probably lied to her too. There's more, I said, scrolling through my phone. Credit card receipts. Hotel bookings. That lingerie from La Perla. Was that for you, Jessica? The $287 worth. You went through my things? Mark stepped forward, aggressive now. Our things, I corrected. Joint account, remember? Joint life. 15 years of joint everything. Until 8 months ago, apparently. This is insane, Jessica said, grabbing her purse again. I'm leaving. Good idea, I said. But before you go, you should know something. Mrs. Patterson? The woman who saw you just now? She's the building's biggest gossip. By tomorrow, everyone in a 5-block radius will know about this. Everyone at Mark's office, too. She's friends with a security guard's wife. Mark's face went from white to red. You did that on purpose. I'm just getting started, I said. You wanted to move assets? Hide money? I've documented everything. Every transaction. Every receipt. Every lie. My lawyer will be very interested. Your lawyer? Mark laughed, but it sounded forced. You don't have a lawyer. I pulled out a business card from my pocket, one I'd gotten just 2 days ago. Margaret Chen. Highest-rated divorce attorney in the state. Specializes in asset recovery and financial fraud in divorce cases. We had a very interesting conversation about hidden accounts and attempt to hide marital assets. Jessica was at the door now. This is too much drama for me. Drama? I followed her. You participated in an 8-month affair, helped yourself to my belongings, played house in my home, and now it's too much drama? What did you expect? That I'd quietly disappear? That I'd be the clueless wife forever? She turned at the door, and for a moment, I saw something like respect in her eyes. I didn't think you had it in you. Neither did I admitted. But you know what they say about cornered animals. She left without another word, her heels clicking down the hallway. Mark and I stood facing each other in our doorway, the threshold of our home that had been violated so thoroughly. "We need to talk," he said. "No," I replied, stepping back inside. "You need to listen. I want you out. Pack a bag, take what you need for a week. You can stay in your little love nest in Riverside Heights. You can't kick me out of my own home. Our home. And actually, I can. See, I've been recording more than just your conversations with Jessica. I have video of you two together, testimony from neighbors, documentation of the affair. My lawyer says that's more than enough for a temporary restraining order based on emotional abuse and violation of trust." "That's not abuse," he protested. "Gaslighting me for months? Making me think I was paranoid and overwhelmed when you were literally bringing your mistress into our bed?" A judge might disagree. He stood there, this man I'd once loved enough to promise forever to, and I saw him clearly for the first time. Not the charming MBA student I'd met at a coffee shop. Not the ambitious professional who'd promised we'd build an empire together. Just a selfish, ordinary man who'd chosen the easy path of deception instead of the hard path of honesty. "When did you become this person?" he asked, and there was genuine bewilderment in his voice. "I didn't become anyone," I said. "I just stopped being who you wanted me to be. The clueless wife. The woman who hates confrontation. The one who'd quietly accept whatever explanation you gave. That woman was killing me slowly, Mark. So I killed her first." He packed in silence while I sat in the kitchen, staring at the perfume bottle. Such a small thing to unravel a life. When he emerged with his suitcase, he paused at the door. For what it's worth, I didn't plan it. Jessica and I. It just happened. "For 8 months?" I asked. "You accidentally gave her a key? Accidentally signed a lease? Accidentally planned to hide assets? That's a lot of accidents, Mark." He had no answer for that. After he left, I walked through my apartment now. It felt different, like the walls were exhaling after holding their breath for months. I picked up the perfume bottle, unscrewed the cap, and took a deep breath. It smelled like evidence, like truth, like the beginning of the end, but also, possibly, like the beginning of something else. Something new. I thought about Jessica, probably in her own apartment now, wondering if anything Mark had told her was true. I thought about Mark, driving to his secret apartment that wasn't secret anymore, realizing his carefully constructed double life had collapsed. And I thought about myself, this new version of Daisy who planted evidence and set traps and recorded conversations. Was I proud of who I'd become? No. But I was proud of not being a victim, of not going quietly into the dissolution of my marriage, of making them face consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "He told me you were separated." "I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. No absolution for either of them. They'd made their choices in my bedroom, with my perfume, in my life. Now they could live with the consequences. I walked to the bathroom and ran a bath, adding lavender oils that had nothing to do with Chanel No. 5. As I sank into the hot water, I thought about tomorrow, the gossip that would spread, the conversations with lawyers, the division of 15 years of accumulated life. But tonight, in my apartment that smelled only of lavender and truth, I would just be. Not the old Daisy. Not the vengeful Daisy. Just Daisy, starting over at 41, wiser and warier, but still standing. The perfume bottle sat on the counter, nearly empty now. I'd buy a new one, I decided. Something different. Something that no one else would ever use without permission. Something that was mine and mine alone. Because I'd learned the hard way that when you don't guard what's yours, someone will always be waiting to take it. The perfume, the husband, the life you thought you were living. But they couldn't take the lesson. They couldn't take the strength I'd found in the searching, in the evidence gathering, in the confrontation. That was mine to keep, bought with 8 months of disappearing perfume and discovered lies. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Asset division. Lawyers. Paperwork. The mundane brutality of untangling intertwined lives. But tonight, I raised an imaginary glass to Mrs. Patterson and her perfect timing. To Jessica, who'd shown her true colors when things got difficult. To Mark, who taught me that the person sleeping beside you could be a stranger. And to the perfume that started it all. That beautiful, expensive bottle of Chanel No. 5 that had been my undoing and my salvation all at once. The water grew cold, but I didn't move. I was learning to sit with discomfort now, to let it teach me what it needed to teach. Because the alternative, the not knowing, the willing blindness, the accepting of lies, that was the real discomfort. That was the real betrayal. Not just Mark's betrayal of me, but my betrayal of myself every time I'd noticed something wrong and looked away. Every time I'd accepted an explanation that didn't make sense. Every time I'd chosen peace over truth. Never again, I promised myself. Never again would I ignore my instincts. Never again would I let someone make me feel paranoid for noticing reality. Never again would I be the woman whose perfume kept disappearing while she pretended not to notice. The old Daisy would have cried tonight. Would have called her sister or her mother, seeking comfort and validation. But this Daisy didn't need comfort. She needed strategy.
Plans.
Action. Because this wasn't the end of the story. This was just Act 4, and I could feel Act 5 building in my bones. The trap that was still to be sprung. The final revelation that would seal their fate. But that was tomorrow's battle. Tonight, I would sleep in my bed, alone but not lonely. Betrayed but not broken. Changed but not defeated. And the perfume bottle would sit on my nightstand. Almost empty now, reminder that sometimes the smallest things reveal the biggest truths. Sometimes a missing ounce of liquid can expose an ocean of lies. Sometimes the things we lose show us what we need to find, starting with ourselves. 3 days had passed since I'd expelled Mark from our home. 3 days of silence, except for the texts from his lawyer and mine beginning their elaborate dance of legal proceedings. But I knew Mark better than anyone. Silence wasn't his natural state. He was planning something, and Jessica would be part of it. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I prepared my trap. The nearly empty Chanel No. 5 bottle sat on my vanity, but next to it was its twin. Identical in every way except for what I'd added to it. Nothing harmful. I wasn't that person, despite what I'd become. Just a combination of allergens that would cause temporary but memorable discomfort, the kind that would make someone think twice before using another woman's perfume again. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Need to get some things. Can I come by at 10? I smiled. Perfect timing. I'll be at the farmer's market until noon. Use your key. Of course, I had no intention of going to the farmer's market. Instead, I positioned myself in my car with a clear view of our building's entrance, coffee in hand, waiting. The rain provided perfect cover, droplets obscuring the windows just enough to hide me while still allowing visibility. Jessica arrived first at 9:45, 15 minutes before Mark had said he'd come. She looked different, dressed down in jeans and a baseball cap, like she was trying to be incognito. But I'd studied her now, memorized her walk, the way she held her shoulders. I'd know her anywhere. Mark arrived at 9:50, looking around nervously before entering. They'd planned this together, thinking I'd be gone. The arrogance of it made my blood simmer. Even after everything, they still thought they could outsmart me. I waited 20 minutes, then made my move. But first, I called Mrs. Patterson. "Oh, Daisy dear. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing, thank you. Actually, I hate to bother you, but I think I left my stove on again. I'm at the market and won't be back for an hour. You don't still have that spare key I gave you last year, do you?" "Of course I do. Should I go check?" "Would you mind terribly? I'm so worried. Maybe bring Mr. Whiskers for his walk while you're at it." "On my way, dear." I gave her 5 minutes, then headed up myself, taking the stairs to avoid the elevator's ding. I could hear them before I even reached my door. arguing, their voices carrying through the thin walls. This is insane. Jessica's voice, high and stressed. My skin is on fire. Just wash it off, Mark was saying. It's probably expired or something. Expired? Perfume doesn't do this when it expires. I heard Mrs. Patterson's key in the lock and quickly positioned myself behind her as she opened the door. The scene was better than I'd imagined. Jessica stood in our bathroom doorway, her face red and blotchy, tears streaming down her cheeks. Whether from the allergic reaction or frustration, I couldn't tell. Mark was frantically Googling something on his phone. The doctored perfume bottle sat on the coffee table, cap off, obviously recently used. "Oh," Mrs. Patterson gasped, then turned to see me. "Daisy, I thought you were at the market." "I forgot my wallet," I said smoothly, stepping past her. "Hello, Mark." "Jessica. Having trouble?" Jessica's eyes widened in horror, her hands flying to her inflamed face. "You did this." "Did what?" I asked innocently. "Use my own perfume in my own home?" "Oh wait, that was you." Mark stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "This is assault, Daisy. We could have you arrested." "For what? Having expired perfume?" "Besides," I pulled out my phone, showing a recording app running. "You just admitted to breaking into my home without permission. Your key privileges were revoked when you moved out, remember? That's actually breaking and entering." Mrs. Patterson was looking between us all like she was watching a tennis match. "Should I call the police?"
"No."
Mark and Jessica said in unison. "Actually," I said thoughtfully, "that might not be a bad idea. Jessica is clearly having an allergic reaction to something. We should document this for insurance purposes, and to establish that they were here without permission." Jessica made a sound somewhere between a sob and a snarl. "I need to go to the hospital." "Emergency room visits are expensive," I noted. "Good thing Mark has excellent insurance." "Oh wait, you're not on his insurance, are you? You're not his wife." The cruelty of it should have bothered me, but the image of them laughing about my cluelessness played in my head, and my sympathy evaporated. "We're leaving," Mark announced, grabbing Jessica's arm. "Without the things you came for?" I asked. "Don't you need your golf clubs? Your father's watch? That expensive suit for your big presentation Monday?" He paused, torn between his possessions and his mistress. "I'll send them to your lawyer," I said. "Every single thing that's yours. But Jessica might want to see a doctor. That reaction looks quite severe." Jessica was scratching now, her neck and arms showing the same red inflammation. "Mark, please, I need to go." As they pushed past us toward the door, I called out, "Jessica, you might want to avoid Chanel products in the future. Seems like you have a sensitivity." She turned back, her swollen eyes narrowed despite their state. "You're evil."
"No. Y correcta."
"I'm done being a victim. There's a difference." After they left, Mrs. Patterson stood in my doorway, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Yeah," I offered. "I have a feeling you have questions." Over Earl Grey and cookies, I gave Mrs. Patterson an edited version of events, enough to satisfy her curiosity and ensure the story would spread in my favor. By the time she left, I knew the narrative would be established. Poor Daisy, betrayed by her husband, but look how strong she's being. That evening, my phone rang. Mark's lawyer. "Mrs. Chen? This is David Brennan. I'm representing Mr. Chen in your divorce proceedings." "He's not Mr. Chen," I corrected. "He's Mr. Taylor. I'm Ms. Chen. I kept my maiden name, remember?" A pause.
"Right."
"Well, my client claims you deliberately poisoned his friend, his mistress. And I did no such thing. I had a reaction to something recently and suspect my perfume might have been contaminated. I was planning to throw it out. How was I to know they'd break into my apartment and use it? They had a key, which was revoked when Mr. Taylor moved out, as he was informed in writing by my attorney 3 days ago. Has he not shared that with you?" Another pause. "Longer this time. We'll be in touch," Brennan said finally. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Sunday arrived with unexpected sunshine, and with it, a determination to uncover everything Mark had hidden. The affair was just the surface. His comment about moving assets haunted me. What else didn't I know about the man I'd shared my life with? I started with our home computer, the desktop we'd shared for years. Mark thought he was clever with his passwords, but he was predictable. His mother's birthday combined with his college jersey number. I was in within 3 tries. His email was clean, he'd been careful there. But his browser history, which he'd forgotten to clear, told a different story. Searches for how to hide assets during divorce and offshore accounts for beginners, and most tellingly, apartment rentals in Miami. Miami. We'd never discussed moving to Miami. I dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs through cached pages and saved passwords. And then I found it, a second bank account I'd never known about, opened 6 months ago. The balance made me gasp. $47,000. Where had that money come from? I photographed everything, then moved to our filing cabinet. Tax returns, insurance documents, investment statements. I'd seen them all before. But now I was looking with different eyes. And there, in tiny print on our last tax return, was a deduction for a home office at an address I didn't recognize. The Riverside Heights apartment had been a love nest. But this other address, what was this? I grabbed my keys and drove to the address, a nondescript office building downtown. The security guard barely looked up as I walked past. Sunday meant minimal staff. The directory showed various small businesses, and there on the 3rd floor, Taylor Consulting, LLC. My husband didn't have a consulting business. Or did he? The office was small, just 2 rooms. His name was on the door. I tried my key ring on a hunch, the mystery key I'd noticed months ago, but never questioned. It worked. Inside, I found a fully furnished office. Desk, computer, filing cabinets. And on the wall, a whiteboard covered in financial projections and client names. Real clients. Real money coming in that I'd never known about. But the real shock was in the filing cabinet. Contracts, invoices, payment records. Mark had been running a side business for 2 years. 2 years of income that never made it to our joint accounts. The contracts alone totaled over $200,000. I sank into his desk chair, overwhelmed by the scope of the deception. This wasn't just about Jessica. This was about a complete double life, financially and romantically. Then I saw the framed photo on his desk, face down. I turned it over expecting to see Jessica, but it wasn't her. It was a woman I didn't recognize, older, sophisticated-looking, with 2 young children. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Daisy Chen? A woman's voice, professional, cold.
Yes.
Who is this? My name is Patricia Morrison. I believe you know my husband. Richard Morrison? Richard Morrison. The name was on the whiteboard, listed as Mark's biggest client. I'm familiar with the name, I said carefully. We need to talk. About your husband and what he's been doing. Can you meet me tomorrow? Yes, I said without hesitation. Where? She gave me the address of a coffee shop downtown. After she hung up, I sat in Mark's secret office, surrounded by evidence of a life I'd never known existed. But something told me Patricia Morrison was about to reveal even more. I spent the rest of the day documenting everything in the office. Every contract, every check, every client contact. My phone's storage filled up, and I had to transfer files to my cloud account twice. By the time I left, I had enough evidence to bury Mark in court. But I wanted more. I wanted to understand. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. Cash payment, discreet service. I gave him Jessica's name and photo. Find out everything about her, I said. Where she's from, how she met my husband, what she wants. Cheating spouse case, he asked, sounding bored. Something like that. He promised results within a week. Back home, I found a bouquet of roses at my door with a card. I'm sorry.
Can we talk? M.
I threw them in the trash, without a second thought. Apologies were worthless now. I wanted answers. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the photo on Mark's desk. Who was that woman? Those children? Patricia Morrison had sounded angry, but also knowing. Like she had pieces of a puzzle I was only beginning to see. I got up and made tea, then sat at my computer researching Richard Morrison. Successful businessman, owned several companies, married to Patricia for 18 years. The society pages showed them at charity events, smiling and polished. But in recent photos, Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. On impulse, I searched for connections between Morrison's companies and Mark's secret business. And there it was. Morrison Industries was Taylor Consulting's primary client, accounting for 60% of the revenue. But why would Patricia Morrison want to meet with me about that? My phone rang at midnight.
Mark.
What do you want? I answered. Jessica's in the hospital, he said. The reaction got worse. They're saying it could have been deliberate poisoning. That's unfortunate, I said flatly. But I failed to see how her allergies are my problem. Daisy, this isn't you. This vindictive person. You're right, I interrupted. This isn't the old me. The old me would have believed your lies, would have ignored the evidence, would have let you steal hundreds of thousands of dollars through your secret business. Silence. Then, how did you? Taylor Consulting, LLC? Nice office, by the way. Very professional. I'm sure the IRS will be interested in seeing those unreported earnings. You wouldn't. Try me. Oh, and Mark? Who's the woman in the photo on your desk? The one with the children? He hung up. I smiled in the darkness. The game was far from over, but I was finally playing with a full deck. Monday morning came too quickly. I dressed carefully for my meeting with Patricia Morrison, professional but not trying too hard. She'd chosen a coffee shop in the financial district, all gleaming chrome and overpriced lattes. I recognized her immediately from the society photos, elegant, early 50s, with a kind of carefully maintained beauty that came from expensive treatments and good genetics. But up close, I could see the strain around her eyes, the tension in her jaw. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. You said this was about my husband. She smiled, but it was sharp. Your husband has been having an affair with my husband. I blinked. I'm sorry. Not sexually, she clarified, seeing my confusion. Financially. They've been moving money through that consulting firm, hiding assets, preparing for something. Preparing for what? She pulled out a folder, slid it across to me. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, property deeds. Your husband and mine have been planning to start a company together in Miami. They've already purchased office space, set up corporate structure, even hired initial staff. All with money that should have been in your marital assets and mine. I studied the documents, my mind racing. How long have you known? 3 months. I hired an investigator when Richard started acting strange. Working late, secret phone calls, the usual signs of an affair. But it wasn't a woman he was sneaking around with. It was your husband and their grand business plans. And Jessica? I asked. Where does she fit in? Patricia's laugh was bitter. The secretary they hired for the Miami office. Though I suspect her duties extend beyond filing. The pieces clicked into place. Jessica wasn't just a mistress. She was part of the plan the new life Mark was building without me. She's been feeding them information, Patricia continued, from her pharmaceutical contacts. They're planning to start a medical supply company, using her connections and their capital. Our capital, I corrected. Exactly. We sat in silence for a moment, two women united by betrayal. What do you want to do about it? I asked. Patricia's smile turned predatory. I want to destroy them. All of them. Legally, financially, completely. I have evidence, I offered. Recordings, documents, proof of the affair. And I have forensic accountants who can trace every penny they've hidden. We spent the next 2 hours strategizing, sharing information, building a case that would leave both men with nothing. Patricia had resources I didn't, lawyers, accountants, connections. But I had something she needed, proof of the personal betrayal that would give her leverage in her divorce. There's something else, Patricia said as we prepared to leave. The woman in the photo on Mark's desk? That's Richard's daughter from his first marriage. She's been estranged from him for years. But Mark's been trying to broker a reconciliation, probably to get access to her trust fund. The depth of Mark's deception kept surprising me. Every time I thought I'd found the bottom, there was another level. Why? I asked. Why go to all this trouble? Why not just ask for a divorce? Because then they'd have to split assets fairly, Patricia said. This way, they get to keep everything they've hidden and start fresh. They think we're stupid, Daisy. They think we won't notice or won't fight back. They're wrong. Yes, she agreed. They are. That afternoon, my private investigator called with his initial findings on Jessica. Jessica Palmer, 31, originally from Columbus, Ohio, moved to the city 3 years ago. Here's the interesting part. She's been married before.
Twice.
Both marriages ended when the husbands discovered she'd been stealing from them. Stealing. Identity theft, credit card fraud, the works. She's got a system: seduce married men, get access to their finances, bleed them dry, then disappear. Your husband isn't her first mark, Mrs. Chen. He's just her latest. I sat back, absorbing this. Mark thought he was using Jessica, but she was using him too. They were all using each other, a triangle of deception and greed. There's more, the investigator continued. She's got a partner. A guy who poses as her brother, but is actually her boyfriend. He's the one who handles the technical side of the fraud while she provides the distraction. Do you have proof? Working on it. Give me another few days. After he hung up, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by evidence of multiple betrayals. Mark's affair, his hidden business, the Miami plan, Jessica's criminal history. It was almost too much to process. But I wasn't overwhelmed anymore. I was energized. Because now I had allies: Patricia Morrison with her resources, the private investigator with his skills, my lawyer with her expertise. And I had knowledge, which was more powerful than all of Mark's lies combined. My phone buzzed. Mark again. Jessica's asking for money for medical bills. This is your fault. I texted back. Tell her to ask her brother for help. I'm sure he has plenty saved from their previous marks. The typing indicator showed for a long time, then disappeared. No response. I smiled, imagining Mark's confusion, his growing realization that his perfect plan was unraveling. He thought he'd been the smartest person in the room, but he'd been played by Jessica, outmaneuvered by Patricia Morrison's husband, and now exposed by the wife he dismissed as clueless. The perfume bottle still sat on my vanity, almost empty now. Tomorrow, I'd throw it away. But tonight, I raised it in a mock toast to the woman I used to be, trusting, naive, willfully blind. She was gone now, replaced by someone harder but wiser. Someone who would never again ignore the signs, never again let anyone make her feel crazy for noticing the truth. The war wasn't over. There were still battles to fight: divorce proceedings, asset recovery, possible criminal charges against Jessica. But I was ready for all of it. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when your perfume keeps disappearing, pay attention. It might just save your life, or at least the life you thought you were living. Tuesday morning arrived with a phone call from my lawyer, Margaret Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, though she joked it was fate that brought us together. Daisy, I've just received some interesting information from Patricia Morrison's legal team. Are you sitting down? I was standing at my window, watching the city wake up. Should I be? The forensic accountants found more accounts. Mark and Richard Morrison have been siphoning money for 3 years, not 2. The total is close to $500,000. I did sit down then, hard on my coffee-stained sofa. $500,000? Your husband was apparently very good at what he did. The consulting firm was completely legitimate on paper, real clients, real services, real revenue. He just never reported it as marital income. Patricia's team also discovered something else. Jessica Palmer? She's been on the payroll for 8 months. He was paying his mistress with our money? Technically his unreported money, but yes. She was listed as a marketing consultant, making $8,000 a month. $96,000 a year for a woman who was already stealing from him. The irony was almost beautiful. There's more, Margaret continued. Patricia wants to meet with both of us tomorrow. She has a plan that could help us both recover maximum assets while ensuring criminal charges are filed where appropriate. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment, trying to process the scale of Mark's betrayal. It wasn't just the affair anymore. It wasn't even just the money. It was the elaborate construction of an entirely separate existence, one where I didn't exist at all. My phone buzzed. The private investigator. Mrs. Chun, I've got what you need on Jessica Palmer.
Can we meet?
An hour later, I sat across from him in a diner that smelled of bacon grease and strong coffee. He slid a thick folder across the Formica table. Jessica Palmer is actually Jennifer Paulson. She's wanted in 2 states for fraud. The brother is really Tommy Paulson. They're married, have been for 5 years. They run cons together. She seduces the Mark, he handles the technical stuff, identity theft, fraudulent accounts, the works. I flipped through the folder, seeing police reports, mugshots, victim statements. How did Mark not know this? He thought he was too smart to be conned. Plus, she's good. Really good. She creates entire backstories, complete with fake social media going back years, references, even fake family members who'll vouch for her. And they're still together? Jessica, Jennifer, and Tommy. Very much so. I followed her after she left the hospital. Went straight to an apartment in Queens, where Tommy was waiting. Got some interesting photos of their reunion. Very affectionate for supposed siblings. He showed me the pictures. Jessica/Jennifer in Tommy's arms, kissing him passionately. The same woman who'd been in my bed with my husband just days ago. Can I keep these? They're yours. There's something else. They've been monitoring your husband's accounts. Based on the computer activity I traced, they were planning to clean him out and disappear within the month. So Mark was going to be a victim too, eventually.
There was poetic justice in that.
That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mother. She lived in Seattle now, having moved there after Dad died, claiming she needed the rain to match her mood. Daisy, is everything all right? You never call on weeknights. Mom, Mark and I are getting divorced. Silence then. I'll fly out tomorrow. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You sound different. Stronger but also harder. That bastard broke something in you, didn't he? Mothers always know. He broke something, I agreed. But maybe it needed to be broken. Maybe I was too soft before. You were never soft, sweetheart. You were kind. There's a difference. Don't let him take your kindness along with everything else he stole. After we hung up, I stood at my vanity, looking at the nearly empty perfume bottle. Tomorrow, Patricia and I would meet with our lawyers to coordinate our attack. But tonight, I had one more card to play. I composed an email to Jessica/Jennifer, using the address I'd found in Mark's phone records. Jennifer Paulson, yes, I know your real name. I also know about Tommy, about the cons, about the warrants in Nevada and Arizona. I have photos of you and Tommy together from yesterday. I'm sure Mark would be very interested to learn his marketing consultant is actually a married con artist. I'm equally sure the police would be interested in your current location. Unless you'd prefer to help me with something. You have 24 hours to respond. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Her response came within an hour. What do you want? Everything Mark told you about the Miami plans. Every detail about the hidden accounts. All of it. In exchange, I forget I know who you really are. And if I refuse, then Mark learns the truth about you tomorrow morning, along with the police. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, fine. But I want immunity from whatever you're planning. You get to disappear. That's your immunity. Take it or leave it. I'll send what I have. The file started coming through 15 minutes later. Screenshots of texts between Mark and Richard Morrison. Bank routing numbers. The lease agreement for the Miami office with both men's signatures. Business plans that showed projected earnings in the millions. And most damning, a recorded conversation where Mark explicitly discussed hiding assets from the wives and laughed about how I was too trusting to ever figure it out. I listened to that recording 3 times, each repetition hardening my resolve. The man laughing about my trust, mocking my faith in our marriage. He wasn't the man I'd married. Or maybe he was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. Wednesday's meeting with Patricia Morrison and our combined legal team took place in a conference room that probably cost more to rent for an hour than most people made in a week. Patricia had assembled an impressive team, 2 divorce attorneys, a forensic accountant, and a criminal prosecutor she'd somehow convinced to consult on the case. "Ladies," Patricia's lead attorney began, "we have enough evidence to destroy both men financially. The hidden assets, the fraudulent business dealings, the unreported income, it's all documented. But we need to be strategic about how we proceed." Margaret Chun laid out our options. We could go for a standard divorce with asset discovery, but that could take years, and they'd have time to hide more. Or, I prompted. Patricia smiled. Or we give them enough rope to hang themselves. I've had an idea. What if we pretend to be willing to reconcile? The room went quiet. "Hear me out," she continued. "Both men are panicking right now. They know we know something, but not how much. If we suddenly seem willing to forgive and forget, they'll get overconfident. They'll make mistakes." "Like what?" I asked. "Like moving the rest of the money. Right now, some assets are still frozen in place because they're afraid to touch them. But if they think we're backing down, they'll consolidate everything for the Miami move," I finished. "Making it easier to seize all at once." Exactly. The plan was elaborate but brilliant. Patricia and I would both reach out to our husbands, claim we'd overreacted, suggest marriage counseling. Meanwhile, our legal teams would be getting federal authorities involved, the IRS for tax evasion, the FBI for wire fraud across state lines. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out the folder on Jessica/Jennifer. "We have a wild card." I explained about Jessica's real identity, her husband Tommy, their con artist history. The criminal prosecutor actually laughed. "This is beautiful. Your husband thought he was cheating with a pharmaceutical sales rep, but he was actually being conned by professional criminals who were planning to rob him blind," I confirmed. "We can use this," Patricia said, her eyes lighting up. "If we can flip her, get her to testify about Mark's plans in exchange for immunity." "She'll never go for immunity that puts her in court," I said. "But she might record him, get him to admit things on tape." The prosecutor shook his head. "That's entrapment if we arrange it." "Not if she does it on her own," Margaret pointed out. "If she just happens to record conversations for her own protection." We all looked at each other, understanding passing silently between us. That afternoon, I sent another email to Jennifer. "Change of plans. I need recordings. Real ones, not screenshots. Get Mark to talk about the money, the plans, everything. You have 1 week." Her response: "What's in it for me?" "You get to keep the $96,000 he already paid you. And you get to disappear before the FBI raid." FBI. Did you really think you could run cons in 3 states without eventually getting caught? The clock is ticking, Jennifer. Help me, or deal with them on your own. Thursday morning, I called Mark. "Daisy." He sounded suspicious, tired. "I think we should talk. Really talk. Maybe I overreacted. You poisoned Jessica. I didn't know she was allergic."
"How could I?"
"And she shouldn't have been using my things anyway. But Mark, we have 15 years together. Doesn't that deserve a conversation?" I could practically hear him calculating, weighing options. "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where we figure out if there's anything worth saving. I've been thinking about marriage counseling." "You have?" The hope in his voice almost made me feel guilty. "Almost. Can we meet for dinner tomorrow? Somewhere public, neutral. Just to talk." "Yes," he said quickly. "Yes, of course. How about Chez Laurent?" The restaurant where he'd taken Jessica. The audacity of it took my breath away. "Perfect," I said. Friday arrived gray and humid, the air thick with impending storm. I dressed carefully. The black dress he'd always loved, the pearl earrings he'd given me for our 5th anniversary, playing the part of the reconciling wife. But first I had another meeting. Jennifer had been busy. We met in a parking garage, her looking nothing like the confident woman who'd been in my home. She was nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. "Here," she said, shoving a USB drive at me. 6 recordings. He talks about everything, the money, the Miami plan, even jokes about taking you for everything in the divorce. And, and he's planning to leave tomorrow night. Emergency business trip to Miami, except he's not coming back. Richard Morrison is already there, setting up the new office. Tomorrow? He got spooked when you mentioned counseling. Thinks you're planning something. He's right, isn't he? I didn't answer, just took the drive. We're leaving too, she said.
Tonight.
Tommy's already packing. Good luck, Jennifer. Try not to destroy any more marriages. She laughed, bitter and sharp. Your marriage was already destroyed. I was just a symptom, not the disease. She was right, of course.
But I didn't need to admit that to her.
Dinner at Chez Laurent was surreal. Mark had gotten a haircut, worn his best suit, even brought a single rose, my least favorite flower, but he'd never bothered to learn that in 15 years. You look beautiful, he said as I sat down. Thank you. We ordered wine. The expensive Bordeaux he only bought for special occasions. He was trying so hard it was almost pathetic. Daisy, I want to explain. No, I interrupted. Not yet. Let's just eat.
Talk.
Remember what it was like before. So we did. We talked about safe things, his mother's health, my sister's new baby, the new restaurant opening down the street from our apartment. My apartment. He'd lost the right to call it ours. As the main course arrived, I said casually, I heard Richard Morrison is in Miami. Patricia mentioned it when I ran into her at Whole Foods. Mark's hand stilled on his wine glass. Oh. She seemed upset. Said something about him making business decisions without her. That's unfortunate. Is it? I thought you worked with Richard. Isn't his business trouble bad for your consulting firm? His eye twitched, that tell I knew so well. It's fine. Just a small project. In Miami? How did you? He caught himself. I mean, yes, he mentioned maybe expanding there. Were you going to go too? To Miami? Of course not. My life is here. You're here. The lie rolled off his tongue like honey, sweet and smooth. I smiled and changed the subject. As dessert arrived, creme brulee, which I didn't even like but he'd ordered for both of us, I excused myself to the bathroom. Once there, I sent a text to Margaret. He's running tomorrow night. Confirmed. Her response was immediate. Teams are in position. Let him run. When I returned to the table, Mark had ordered champagne. What are we celebrating? I asked. New beginnings, he said, raising his glass. Daisy, I know I hurt you, but I want to fix this. I want to come home. Home. I miss you. I miss us. I raised my glass, clinked it against his. To new beginnings. We drank, and I watched him relax, thinking he'd won. Thinking I was still the same trusting Daisy who'd ignored all the signs for months. There's something I should tell you, I said, setting down my glass. I hired a private investigator. His face went white.
What?
I know about Taylor Consulting. The hidden accounts. Miami. All of it. He started to stand, but I grabbed his wrist. Sit down, Mark. We're not done. You said you wanted to reconcile.
Elite.
Just like you've been lying for 3 years. How does it feel? This is entrapment. No, this is consequence. Did you know Jessica's real name is Jennifer? That she's married to Tommy, the man she claimed was her brother? That they're con artists who've been planning to rob you blind. His mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. She's been recording you, by the way. Every conversation about the money, the plans, your jokes about taking me for everything. The FBI has those recordings now. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone, played a snippet of his voice. Daisy's too trusting to ever figure it out. By the time she realizes what happened, I'll be in Miami with everything. That's illegal recording. Actually, Jennifer recorded it.
For her own protection, she says.
Con artists are very careful about documentation. A waiter approached, and I smiled pleasantly. Could we get the check, please? Mark's hands were shaking now. Daisy, please. We can work this out. We could have. 3 years ago, when you started lying. 2 years ago, when you opened secret accounts. 8 months ago, when you gave another woman a key to our home.
But now?
Now it's too late. What do you want?
Money?
The apartment? You can have it all. I don't want anything from you, except the truth. So tell me, was any of it real? Our marriage? The life we built? Or was I always just a convenience while you built your real life somewhere else? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his eyes, the mask finally dropping completely. You want the truth?
Fine.
You were safe. Predictable. You made me look good, successful husband, stable marriage. But you were never enough. Never exciting enough. Never ambitious enough. Never enough. The words should have hurt. Instead, they freed me. Because now I knew for certain that the man I'd loved had never really existed. He'd been a performance just like this dinner.
Thank you, I said, standing.
For finally being honest. Where are you going?
Home.
My home. You should probably go to Miami tonight instead of tomorrow. The FBI will be at the airport tomorrow evening. His face went from white to green. You didn't. Tax evasion, wire fraud, conspiracy to hide assets. Patricia Morrison's team found everything. Oh, and Richard? He's already been arrested. Happened about an hour ago, right when we were having appetizers. I dropped cash on the table for my half of dinner. I didn't want to owe him anything, not even a meal, and walked away. Daisy, he called after me. You can't do this. You don't understand what you're doing. I turned back one last time. I understand perfectly. I'm ending this story on my terms, not yours. Outside, the storm had finally broken, rain falling in sheets. I stood under the restaurant awning and called Patricia. It's done, I said. Richard's in custody, she confirmed, singing like a canary about Mark's involvement to try to get a better deal. Your husband's credit cards have been frozen, bank accounts seized. He's got nowhere to run. I thought about Mark, probably still sitting at that table, trying to figure out his next move. But there were no moves left. Every escape route had been cut off, every asset frozen, every lie exposed. My phone buzzed. Jennifer, we're at JFK. Thank you for the head start. I didn't respond. She'd helped, but she was still a predator who destroyed other marriages. I'd kept my word. She could disappear. But I felt no obligation to wish her well. Another text, this one from Mark. You've destroyed my life. I typed back. No. You destroyed our life. I just documented it. Then I blocked his number. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. The news had broken. Major financial fraud ring busted, 2 prominent businessmen arrested. Mark's photo was on the front page of the business section, alongside Richard Morrison's. The article mentioned their wives' crucial cooperation in the investigation. My mother arrived that afternoon, took one look at me, and pulled me into a hug. How are you really? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. Relieved? Angry? Empty? All of it at once. That's normal. You've been in survival mode for weeks. It'll take time to process everything. We spent the day packing up Mark's remaining belongings. Each item felt like an archaeology project. Who was the man who wore these ties? Who chose these books? Had I ever really known him at all? In his nightstand drawer, I found a receipt for another perfume bottle. Chanel No. 5, purchased 2 days ago. Had he been planning to replace what Jessica had used? Try to cover his tracks? Or was it meant as a reconciliation gift? I'd never know. And I realized I didn't care. Margaret Chen called that evening with an update. Mark's been arrested. He's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. The divorce will be straightforward now. With the criminal charges, he has no leverage. You'll get the apartment, your fair share of all assets including the hidden ones, and substantial alimony. I don't want alimony, I said. I just want to be done. Are you sure? You're entitled. I'm entitled to move on with my life. That's all I want. Sunday morning, I stood in my bathroom with the almost empty perfume bottle. The thing that had started it all. Such a small detail to unravel such a large deception. I thought about throwing it away, but instead, I placed it on the highest shelf of my medicine cabinet. A reminder, not of Mark or the betrayal, but of the importance of paying attention to the small things. The things that don't quite fit. The stories that don't quite make sense.
My phone rang.
Patricia Morrison. How are you holding up? She asked. Better than expected.
You? Same.
Listen, I wanted to thank you. If you hadn't noticed your perfume disappearing, hadn't started investigating, I might never have discovered what Richard was doing. We helped each other, I said. Yes, we did. Two wives who weren't as clueless as they thought. After she hung up, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table in my apartment, and thought about what came next. The divorce would take months to finalize. There would be court dates, paperwork, the tedious untangling of 15 years. But there would also be other things. Therapy, probably. Rebuilding trust in my own judgment. Learning to be alone after so many years as half of a couple. My new perfume sat on the counter. Something different, something that was just mine. I sprayed it on my wrists, inhaling the scent of jasmine and sandalwood. It smelled nothing like Chanel No. 5. It smelled like starting over. The doorbell rang. Mrs. Patterson stood there with a casserole dish and a sympathetic smile. I thought you might not feel like cooking, she said. Thank you. Would you like to come in for tea? As she settled on my couch, she said carefully, I heard about Mark. It's all over the building. I imagine it is. Are you all right? I considered the question. Was I all right? My marriage was over. My husband was in jail. Everything I'd thought I knew about my life had been a lie. But I was still here. Still standing. Still breathing. I will be, I said, and for the first time, I truly believed it. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop and started writing. The story of a woman whose perfume kept disappearing. The story of small things that reveal big truths. The story of how sometimes destruction is necessary for reconstruction. I wrote about Mark and Jessica and Jennifer and Tommy. About Patricia and Richard and hidden accounts and secret apartments. About the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming. But mostly I wrote about the perfume. That beautiful bottle of Chanel No. 5 that had been my anniversary gift, my treasured possession, my first clue that something was terribly wrong. Such a small thing to change a life. Such a small thing to save one, too. Because if my perfume hadn't kept disappearing, I might have stayed in that marriage forever. Blind, trusting, slowly disappearing myself, one spray at a time. Instead, I noticed. I investigated. I fought back. And I won. The perfume was almost gone now, just a few drops left in the bottom of the bottle. But I didn't need it anymore. I had something better, the knowledge that I could trust myself. That my instincts were right. That when something felt wrong, I had the strength to face it, investigate it, and ultimately overcome it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The divorce proceedings, the gossip, the rebuilding. But tonight, in my apartment that smelled of jasmine and sandalwood and new beginnings, I raised a glass of wine to the woman in the mirror. This scent is mine, I said to her, echoing the words I'd promised myself weeks ago. And mine alone. She smiled back at me, tired but triumphant, bruised but not broken, ready for whatever came next. What small, seemingly insignificant detail in your life might be trying to tell you a truth you're not ready to face? If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the tiny clues that expose life-changing deceptions.